This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 49. Ben Wills. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 49 of Experts on the Wire. We have a very fun show for you today. I timed this with the end of the year, going into the new year, because I have Ben Wills on the show and we're talking about the topic of vlogging. Now, for those of you that have not been paying attention, vlogging has really kind of exploded in the last year or two. But granted, most of the vlogs out there are sort of an entertaining style. But Ben is doing something very interesting with his vlog because it's marketing oriented. And I think this is a land grab moment opportunity in the world of vlogging, where if you're really looking to stand out and trying to think of ways to do so in the year 2017 coming up in the new year, vlogging might be the thing you are looking for. And Ben and I kind of dissect vlogging. We talk about what it takes to do it, the equipment, the process, but we talk about so many other fun things along the way, such as story structure, Markov chains, the future of marketing and technology, artificial intelligence. There's so much stuff. And we even talk, yes, a little bit about SEO and content marketing for all my SEO fans out there. Ben was actually, and is still actually, the owner and founder of Ontolo, which is a prospecting tool. It's very similar to Citation Labs, if you've heard about that. You might want to check out his tool as well. And we do talk a little bit about some SEO and outreach and link building types of things towards the end of the show. And of course, you can go to evolvingseo.com/wire, where you can sign up on the email list, get the links, resources, show notes directly from me right in your inbox after every episode posts. Whew, got to take a quick breath there. But with that, let's get into episode 49 of Experts on the Wire with my guest, Ben Wills.
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us. So we were just chatting for a second. And for the listeners, this is going to be a complete departure for all the other styles of interviews I've done so far. I have no questions. I have no notes in front of me. We're on Skype. We're just going to have a chat. But what really sparked me to want to contact you, I think, is probably going to lead to a great conversation around the topic of vlogging and maybe a little bit about your company, Ontolo, if I'm saying that correctly. But I want to just jump in there. You started a vlog. So tell me, first of all, for the few listeners that might not know what that is, what's a vlog and why did you start one?
So a vlog it's basically a blog, but with video. And I started one. So I sort of put this in that first video, but I don't really watch a lot of movies. I don't really watch TV shows. I haven't had a TV in 10 years. I don't really do like a lot of entertainment type stuff. It's just not my thing. But for whatever reason, I came across this vlog, Sailing La Vagabond. And there's this like fantasy that I have that one day I'm going to sail around the world, even though I've only been on a sailboat once. And I was like, why am I watching this? And then I came across Gary Vee's vlog, and then I came across Casey Neistat's vlog, and I'm like, why am I watching? This is not like, people know me as the guy that doesn't watch TV.
So you're saying it almost like caught you off guard, like somebody had tricked your brain. Like you don't watch TV or television or movies, but you find yourself consuming this entertainment, this form of entertainment, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I've studied psychology for the last 10 years, so I'm interested in this stuff. And then I became interested in why I was interested in it.
Right.
And I began really deconstructing some of that stuff. With the sailing vlog, it's pretty easy. That's a fantasy and I get to live vicariously through them. That's a pretty easy one. With Gary Vee, he has like the motivational piece. But Casey Neistat, I think the thing that that really caught me about his work is the quality of it. It's the fantastic storytelling, the fantastic editing, you can see, like, I went back and I watched a lot of his older videos. You can see he's really crafted his persona as well. And I think that's what struck me was it was really Casey's. When I saw the quality, I was like, oh, there's something here.
Right.
And the reason I decided to do it is because I kept seeing these marketing tactics come up over the years. I've been in marketing since 2001. I remember when blogging got big, just seeing all the social media stuff, seeing search grow, all of that. And I kind of just watched everything happen. And this was one that I looked at and I said, I'm gonna give this one a shot.
It must have been a little frightening to do that because a vlog takes a considerable amount of effort, doesn't it?
So I didn't know that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just decided to start vlogging 3 days a week. I was doing every day. And one of the things that I did was to just sort of like anchor it for me that this is just a thing that I do every day is I would go up to the mountains, about 15, 20-minute drive, and get the sunrise from a few different angles. So doing the sunrise, going back up later in the day to record the video, then coming back and doing the editing, it's easily 8 hours a day.
Right. Yeah. So I have to say, I've watched all the vlogs you mentioned except for the sailing one. Yeah. And when I relate, when I discovered Casey's vlog, I was like, okay, this is something special here. And I really think he has one of those special just talents, and Absolutely. It's been a lot of hard work, and we can dissect him on another episode maybe, but
yeah.
I have to say, after trying to hunt down other vlogs that maybe I liked, yours is really well done.
Thank you.
And maybe it is coming from studying people like Casey, or really trying to dig into the technology and what makes a good vlog and good editing and all that. And I want to get into all that stuff, but I just want to preface that first, is that's why I contacted you, because I think it's really well done. And I just watched your latest episode today.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're starting to find a good rhythm on the editing and the story and all of that. So talk to me about the process of it. So if somebody wants to start a vlog, from what you know now, what do they need to do to prepare for that? I mean, because a vlog is no longer just turning on your iPhone, right? I mean, it's really stepped up to another level. So what's the equipment we need, the software? How do we plan it out? Let's start there.
Yeah. So where should I start this? I should start by saying I basically had like no video experience. But there is something that I have, and I listened to when I think Will Critchlow, or I forget if it was Will or Tom, interviewed you.
Tom, yeah.
And so I got to hear some of your backstory.
Yeah.
And so you used to play piano. Maybe still play piano.
Yeah.
I used to throw rays, and I used to DJ, and I also grew up playing violin.
Oh, okay.
So there's a music piece, understanding timing of music. And also I love comedy. Even to the extent of studying it, seeking out any interview between like any of the talk show hosts and any comedian I'll watch this. I love seeing comedians talk.
Yeah. Yep. So
I think those were kind of the hooks that I had, is understanding the audio timing and then maybe some bits of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, to get started, I had an old camcorder that was probably, 5 or 6 years old, that did 1080p, but I couldn't get the color right. And that was one of the things that really stood out about Casey's vlogs, is that the color and the editing is just solid.
It's like a work of art, really. It's not just a video. It's almost film, but as a vlog.
Yeah, I still don't know how he does it. I'll be honest. I've probably got over 100 hours of editing under my belt, or actually maybe 200 hours. I'm getting a little closer, but I still don't know it.
Yeah.
But what I found is that it's really difficult to get that quality without a DSLR. Although some of the newer handhelds, like the PowerShot, I think Sony just came out with like an X100 or something like that. I've seen some people using those. And I think the thing about the camera is being able to get it crisp. And I like a DSLR because I can control everything, and I can put different lenses on, and I can get different kinds of shots. I just got a 300 millimeter telephoto lens. I used it yesterday for the first time, and it's like a whole new set of shots that I can get right now.
Sure.
And I didn't realize it was going to be that important.
Yeah.
So I really actually, if somebody's going to do this, I do recommend getting a DSLR. I got a 70D. It's what Casey uses. I figure if he uses it as rough as he is on his equipment, that's probably a good idea for me to use as well.
Yeah.
So I just picked up one of those. I've got 3 different lenses, and I would also say, like, I've tried to use DSLRs before. I used to have a Sony Alpha 100, I think, many years ago, and I never fully understood f-stop and aperture and like shutter speed. I never really understood sort of the
mechanics of the
symphony
camera.
of it.
Yeah,
exactly, and how it would affect the shot.
Yep.
And so I spent a lot of time really studying that. And I think that's a really important piece that would be, it's hard to get that with a camcorder or with an iPhone, even though the video quality on an iPhone is going to be crisp. There's just a different quality that you can get with a DSLR and getting to choose your lens.
Yeah, I want to sidestep. So I originally asked what's the equipment we need, but I want to sidestep for a moment and bring it a little bit to the marketing aspect of a vlog.
Sure.
We'll come back. You mentioned in one of your vlogs actually that you're doing it because it struck me like no one in the world of marketing is pulling off a vlog.
Sure.
I mean, Gary maybe, but he's got a team. He's got people to help him, Yeah. No one's really pulling it off in the way that I imagine in my head it could be pulled off, in the way that I believe that you're starting to execute it. So this is not it. You mentioned it takes a considerable amount of effort, and that's why it's like a unique selling proposition. That's why it's can be so special, right? So what would you say to the business owner, the entrepreneur, the person that runs software? Like, if somebody is considering starting a vlog, who is that for? Or maybe just speak to that level of that threshold of effort. I mean, you've researched f-stops and aperture, and that's not just firing up a WordPress account and writing 300 words and hoping you tweet it and somebody's going to see it. So speak to that level and difference of effort and production and everything.
Yeah. So who is it for? I would say it's for someone who's willing to take a big risk. You can't, I expect that I'm not going to see much of an ROI on this for the first 6 months. It's going to be a second job for 6 months before anything really comes of it. That's sort of how I'm looking at it. And that's 6 months at the minimum. It could take a year. So I think if someone's interested in it, that's an important piece to realize is it's a risk. It's because it's unproven. And I think it's a pretty huge investment.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
and that's interesting, isn't it? That you're saying it's unproven. Like, if I go start a blog now, I have a little bit of comfort and security. It's been done, and it's worked, and it's been successful.
Yeah.
And on the other side, in terms of just noticing you in the marketing world and stuff, you don't seem to be speaking as much or blogging as much. And so you've been a little quiet in terms of like social media and stuff like that. So is this sort of your way of kind of stepping back into publishing content and finding an area where you have a little niche for yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the reason that I've been quiet the last 4, maybe even 5 years, I started coaching, doing relationship type coaching. And I thought that was the direction that I was going to take. It's the most meaningful work that I've done. But I was about a year into it and realized I had never actually fully fulfilled the vision that I had for Onslow, and that bothered me. It felt unfinished. And so when I sat down and I said, what does this actually look? So it had been, I had been letting Onslow sort of settle out and decline for a couple of years at that point while I was doing this coaching and personal development work. And then 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to do Onslow the way that it appeared in my mind. And that set me off on a whole different journey. I write C code. Like, I'm not really a programmer, but I write everything. I started in Perl, and then I started writing in C because there were pieces of it that needed to be done well. And so really, until the last few months, for a year and a half, I basically sat in a chair every day and wrote code. Wow. Taught myself to code and rewrote every piece of code in Onslow. Everything is rewritten from the ground up. So that's why everything was kind of quiet for a few years there. I didn't know if I was going to be doing marketing. And now looking at it, I'm committed to Onslow for at least several more years. And once I made that decision that this is what I'm doing now, and I'll get back to coaching and relationship stuff, or I'll do them both at the same time. Once I decided that, then it opened up the possibility of doing something like a vlog and committing to something like this.
And I think what's really interesting about the vlogging format is you're forced to be entertaining in a way, even though you said you don't like entertaining things, because in a blog post, you can just say that, the 7-step process for getting links or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
You made that up, and you just deliver basically a how-to. But in a vlog, in a video, and to podcasting to some extent, you need to grab people in the first 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. So talk a little bit about what you've learned so far in terms of how to make, I had somebody say, oh, I wrap it in bacon, right? How have you learned ways to wrap educational tutorial content in something more interesting in a video format?
Yeah, I think the best advice I could give, not having a ton of experience here, is that it will be important for people to find their own styles. So, there are people in the industry that are super social. Go do the super social thing and put that on film. I'm not one of those people. I love being alone in the mountains. Like that's fun to me. And I like sitting and just like laying on the floor and trying to figure out hard problems to solve. Like that's my thing. The entertaining piece, I think that's actually the competitive advantage, which I think is kind of what you were getting at, is I can just cram the information in here, but there are a lot of videos that are purely informative, but they don't grab you. Yeah. And if I can figure out the entertainment piece, or if somebody else figures out the entertainment piece, I think that's really the competitive advantage, that you can help people learn stuff and position yourself in the market. And at the same time, like, they don't feel like they're sitting in a classroom.
Yeah, I think one thing you do well is in the one you posted today, for example, you show you actually pondering what you're trying. We're seeing you try to figure out what you want to say.
Exactly.
Not just the end thing. So you're obviously consciously doing that to an extent, but how does that look in terms of a process? Do you just have the camera rolling and then you edit that stuff in? Or are you acting those moments in a certain way? Like where you said Casey develops a persona, like what's the psychology with that?
So thank you for asking that. 'Cause that was actually, I would usually edit that out, those moments where you can see me thinking through it. But I do think there's an important piece of vlogging that's just like being authentic. And the truth is, I've been thinking about this hard for the last 2.5 weeks. And if I just came on camera and I had everything and I edited everything really tight, you wouldn't really get the sense of how hard I worked to get to the conclusion that I did. And so I actually left that stuff in there, the confusion, because that's actually been my experience to get to this point. Yeah. So I do try to, so there's a ton you can do in editing. I've had some horrible days post editing. It's like, you'd never know how bad the wind was or the light or any of that stuff. But I do think there's a piece of like letting yourself be seen that I am conscious of trying to really integrate into the vlog.
Yeah, I have to say, I think you do a very good job of that so far. It's the balance between the authentic, but giving some real value. Walk us through like a day of vlogging. So you wake up, you say, I'm going to make a vlog today. Technically, all the footage should be in that day, right? To have it authentically be a vlog, right? You should try to like pull edits from different days. So, and I know you get some sunrises. So what do? You wake up and you go to the mountain and you get like, what's your process through the day?
Yeah. So I actually have a notebook where I have written out ideas. And I will be driving and I just, let me figure out how to say this precisely. Coming up with the ideas is one of the hardest pieces of it. This is one of the biggest reasons why I had to drop to 3 days a week, is because to come up with a profound new idea every single day and develop it into, a nice tight 5 to 10 minutes that's really hard. Yeah. And even just some of the basic ideas that I have before like today's vlog, I probably worked on that, thinking through it for about an hour and a half before I actually got in front of the camera.
Okay.
So a typical day is, I have this notebook of ideas that I've sort of outlined. Each page has a new idea, and that gives me some space. And I wake up first thing in the morning. I go up to the mountains. There are a few different spots. So depending on how the clouds are showing up, I'll go to a different spot to get different shots. So as I'm driving up, it's usually about a 15-minute drive. I'm still working out the idea. I usually have at that point the thing that I'm going to talk about that day. I set up at least the DSLR to get the sunrise. I try to get 3 or 4 different shots. Sometimes I'll even use my iPhone if I can. And so that's, it's an hour, 2 hours.
You have something you want to say, like the point or the topic of that day. And then you stand in front of the camera, you're on the mountaintop usually, and you record. So essentially you've got like a core thing you're trying to get out and get a good take of it. And then you come back from that, and now you have the editing process. We're not even close to done yet. So what does the editing process look like for you? What software do you use? How long does it take you?
So I use Final Cut, and I really like it. It's simple. It's straightforward. I have friends that use Premiere. You can do a lot more with Premiere. It would probably confuse me, to be honest. I'm not. I like how kind of straightforward Final Cut is, even though there's sometimes that it just like there's some things about it that are infuriating. But I think Final Cut is fine, and I'm getting faster with it. That usually takes, I would say, it's 3 to 4 hours of editing, minimum. And then the other part that I think a lot of people don't realize is once I create it, I have to go back and watch it again. And then once I watch it again, now I'm taking out more and more stuff. I want to get it really tight. Once that's done, I start uploading it, or I have to export it. So the export takes, 10 minutes or whatever, to get the final version. And then you have to upload it.
Yeah.
I'm on a pretty decent connection here. That can be up to 20 minutes for YouTube, another 20 minutes for Facebook. So it's another hour and a half just to get the stuff online. Yeah. And then I also, once it's on YouTube, I watch it on YouTube to make sure everything went well. And then I watch it also on Facebook. On Facebook, I watch it on my phone to make sure that everything went well.
Sure. And I didn't realize you were doing this on Facebook. How has that side of things been going? Are you getting some traction there? Are you getting an audience going with that on Facebook?
Yeah. So Facebook, I trimmed my friends list on Facebook a number of times through the years. So, there are under 400 folks there. Most of them are my friends, but also some marketers. The interaction from Facebook is higher than YouTube because I haven't really pushed a lot of people there yet. And like you said, I've sort of been out of the industry for a while, and I'm just coming back into it.
Yeah, that's good. I want to go check out your Facebook feed for that. In terms of the content of the vlog, you started your first batch of episodes. You talked a little bit about marketing, about psychology, the different personality tests. I loved all of that. I mean, I hadn't even just heard people address the different Myers-Briggs and everything from those perspectives. But now you did a lot of thinking, and you're talking about shifting towards pulling back the curtain onto Ontolo and showing us how you develop the tools within that and the programming. And so talk to me a little bit about what you're looking to do moving forward in terms of the content.
Yeah, so I really believe pretty strongly that the future of marketing is the integration of technology at all levels. It's already happening, and I think it's only going to get more so that way. And because Ontolo is a marketing technology, and particularly because I learned C the way that I did, over the last 2 years, I have a much, much deeper understanding of the technology, the hardware, how everything works, just at all levels. And one of the things that I thought, and so as I'm like thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, I'm like, I'm going to run out of ideas. I'm going to run out of interesting things to talk about, but I also still have to run my business. And that's when I sort of got the idea of like, why don't I just show people what this is like,
bring it together.
Yeah. There's not, designing an interface isn't, like I don't have a competitor that's going to watch that and like beat me to the interface. So there's not much that's really private about it. It's just nobody's ever shown it before.
Right.
And so I thought that could be a good way. It gives me something every day or every week to talk about, and I can point to, and I can say, this is how a relational database works. And this is how you set it up so that you don't have data that's duplicated. You set everything up in different tables. This is how you set up joins, to give people an understanding of like, this is behind the scenes. All this data is stored in a certain way, and it's done in a really smart way. And it's such a simple idea, but it really helps reshape how you think about things in my experience. And so I encounter those things over and over, and I figured it's just a good touch point to share all this stuff with people. It's
funny you mentioned the databases. I have very limited experience with I don't know if I would even call it programming, but
sure.
Technical. I've set up databases, and the wiring in the brain that you have to be able to just think about relational databases, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, just helps in so many areas. I find even doing SEO in terms of thinking about the relationships of keywords to pages or, things like that. So that's just something I wanted to say because it hit me in the head there. But I wanted to ask about your comment in terms of the future of marketing. And you're talking about how technology is so important. And in the video, you talk about how technology is going to be changing marketing. And we're seeing this with chatbots, and I've got my new Google Home sitting over there and all this stuff. So in a concrete way, where do you see marketing moving in terms of technology changing things? Is it going to limit the need for marketers? Is it going to change the tools we use? Like what types of things do you think might change?
So fundamentally, what I'm observing is just the process of commoditization. So I have friends that I went to college with, they're designers, and I remember 15 years ago, these guys are designing typefaces, and I just remember thinking like, you always have to have a human doing this. And that's not the case anymore. And it's not the case with different elements of design. You can even set up Markov chains to write content that is, you read it and you're not sure if a human wrote it or if a machine wrote it. The gray area is getting pretty gray there.
For the listeners, what is a Markov chain?
So a Markov chain, so it's a sort of fundamental piece of machine learning where so a lot of spammers have used this for a long time. What you would do is you would take a bunch of articles about one particular topic, feed it into an algorithm that looks at the sequence of words. So it could say that the word engine appears after search a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And then so it'll start quote unquote writing its own content and do one word to the next, depending on which word is most likely to appear afterwards. That's an oversimplified example, but you can give a Markov algorithm a bunch of content and it will create something new out of it.
Oh, wow. How is this replacing people doing typefacing?
So typefacing, that just goes to design, where I was reading a thing where somebody created a machine learning application that designs logos.
Wow.
And that's like another level beyond typefaces where, people are, as humans, we're pretty simple. Like we have certain like fundamental things that we're drawn towards or away from. And the fundamental premise of machine learning is that if we give the machine enough of how humans work, it can create something that's pretty indistinguishable from what a human would create.
Yeah. Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. And so
just to push a little, and I don't have as much familiarity with this. So my mind says, well, don't we need the human touch? Don't we need something? If we're talking about a logo, isn't the human the only thing that's qualified to understand the to have emotion? You know what I mean? Isn't human touch important for that? And can machines really replace the beauty and the function and the art of a truly magnificent logo?
So, you just said exactly what I think is the crux that I don't think machines will ever be able to do, and that's art. I look at art as like the purest form of expression.
Yeah.
Great art connects with someone in this pure just form of expression or feeling or experience or whatever it might be. And even if we come up with artificial intelligence, I just don't see that being replicated. I don't actually think we'll ever come up with artificial intelligence. I think it's impossible. Maybe I'm proven wrong in that, but yeah, there is something. And so the art piece is, I think there's a lot more room for that in vlogging now than there is with blogging, for example. And that's one of the things that attracts me to it, is that it is this sort of expression that you can't hand it to an intern. Right. Like you can't hand it, even Gary Vaynerchuk, he's got a guy that films him and he's got somebody else who edits. It's a very different feel than Casey Neistat's. Casey never had somebody edit his stuff. And Casey always said, like, nobody else can understand his day better than him, so nobody else can actually edit it. It's similar to what you're saying. Like, there's this human experience that I just don't know how you could replicate it.
Yeah, I like how you just framed that and said we can't give it to an intern. And so that's interesting to me. The people that are willing and have the courage almost to try something like that versus doing something. And I think that speaks to maybe one of the pinnacles of really great marketing is being able to step out and do something that's never been done before. Yeah. And I'm wondering, are there any other areas besides vlogging that you see this opportunity in now with marketing? Because even I'm trying to think about this. How can I stand out as a marketer? And certainly podcasting is not a novel thing anymore. There's thousands of podcasts. So, and it's been, I think, more of a challenge to stand out with a podcast in 2016 than if I had started in 2009 when I really wanted to and then never did. But what other ways do you think, or are you maybe aware of, that you can stand out now in marketing?
I'm going to say something that for the last 10 or 15 years has always been such a cliche to me. And now I feel like I understand why it's a cliche.
Yeah.
I think if you can find a great story, and if you can figure out how to get that story expressed and then land it so that people really understand the emotion of it and the experience of what that story represents, you can apply that to any medium. And, like you're doing this with podcasting, which is essentially interviewing. And if you go look at Larry King or Howard Stern, Howard Stern's interview with Louis C.K., I saw that and I was like, oh, this is why he's Howard Stern. He got Louis to open up in a way that I don't think anyone else in the world could have.
Right.
He got to something in Louis and designed it in a way that everyone listening and watching got it too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, if you can get to like what we're talking about, the art or the human experience or the expression of it, I think you can apply it to any medium. And the things that I see growing now are things like Snapchat. But that's just taking a story and condensing it. You have these little mini stories, and then the story is ultimately the person. What's happening in their life throughout the day and throughout the weeks and months.
I'm glad you brought up storytelling. I want to hang on that and actually talk about this as a topic for a second. I completely agree. This is something that I always heard as a cliche since day one as a marketer. Tell a story. And it always frustrated me because I never knew what that meant. Like, what does that mean? Do I have to come up with characters? Do I have to, fabricate a fictional story? Like, what do you mean to tell a story? That always frustrated me. And I think I'm learning more and more that it is a vague statement, but then you need to bring it down and figure out where to apply it. So, for example, when I'm interviewed, like you heard me interviewed with Tom on my show, I'm trying to dig up these deep unconscious little anecdotal moments that happen throughout my life so that when people interview me, I can just pull them out and tell them as a little entertaining thing, but also it has a message to it. Sure. It tells somebody more about myself than if I just said, I'm a creative person. It says more to somebody if I say, when I was 3, the only thing that got me to stop crying was when my mom took me into a piano store and I discussed, you know what I mean? And that's really hard for me though. So my first question for you about storytelling is, does it come naturally to you?
Not at all. And in fact, I have friends that for years they have these stories, they tell them, and they have every single person's attention until they're done with a story. And it's fantastic. And I've never known how they did it.
Yeah.
It does not at all come naturally to me. I have had to work to begin understanding it to whatever degree that I understand it now.
And so are there little elements of it? Because I have to say, I mean, in some of your vlogs, I've picked up on elements of storytelling where you'll hint at something, oh, tomorrow I'm going to tell you this. And then you're like, now I got to wait till tomorrow. But you want to watch the next episode.
Sure.
It's a clever little, like, I almost picture it like you're leaving little breadcrumbs, right? You're leaving a little trail where people want to go pick that up. So was that conscious, or are there other things that you've done that have helped you learn about stories so far?
Yeah. So if you do a Google search for, I think it's called Freytag analysis, that's just a graph of narrative structure. So you have, sort of the setting, you have the conflict, the rising action. I forget all the parts. There are only a couple more parts. The resolution, all of that. There's a more advanced one. It's actually the wallpaper now on my laptop. It's called Arch Plot Structure. Huh. So somebody just went through, it's basically the same graph shape, but they developed it out even more. And they have more examples of it. I think ultimately what I've come to is that a story is conflict and resolution, period. And I realized maybe a week ago, I posted a video or just a photo on Facebook. And I realized that I had structured, it was one sentence, but the one sentence had the conflict and the resolution. And I realized that the way that I structured it was to introduce the conflict first. And it was a panorama of, on the left, you see the sun, and on the right, you see these clouds rolling in. And the sentence was 30 seconds later, the snow rolled in. And so first is the conflict, like 30 seconds later, like, well, what happens 30 seconds later? There's this tension that's built. Yeah. And then the resolution is that the snow rolled in. Yeah. And so the way that I look at that is just introducing the tension and resolution, and then developing as much in the middle as possible.
One cool story format, there's a podcast called, I think, How Sound. It breaks down the story structures or the storytelling aspects of other podcasts. So this one, they talked about the lowercase e story structure, which basically you begin in the middle chronologically, and then you kind of work through that. That's the first plot point on the time graph. And then you go backwards to where things began. And then you cross through where things started and then end up in the future. And I guess this is apparently used everywhere in movies, TV, everywhere. So now I'm looking for these scenarios, but for you, because my brain needs a formula, right? I need give me a mathematical, you've got your whiteboard, I've got my whiteboard. Give me some kind of formula that I can analyze and understand the structure, and then I'll mold it and change it. Is that the same for you? You need like a structure?
Yeah, and I have to practice it. So for me, the practice is really important, because what I've learned about how I learn is that I want it to become second nature, and repetition is a deliberate repetition, like really sitting down and working the idea over and over. And so for me, because I'm speaking to marketers, ultimately I want marketers watching this. What I need to do is understand what their day-to-day is. Like, what is the conflict in their day-to-day? The conflict is the client just called, the rankings just dropped. The conflict is there's a reputation thing to deal with. The conflict is, you're hungover on a Monday. How do you automate your work so you don't have to do work for a day, or whatever it is? Yeah. And so when I come up with the ideas of what to talk about in the vlog, what I try to do is figure out how that connects to the emotional piece of who's listening and who's watching. Yeah. And then I try to bring those two things together.
Awesome. One little thing I'll put in the show notes too, is you mentioned Casey, and obviously I knew he would come up. He's like the foremost blogger and a vlogger. Unfortunately, he just stopped vlogging daily, which, it's funny. Seth Godin says, "Will you be missed?" That's the sign you're doing something remarkable. And I find myself every day, I want to watch Casey's video.
Yeah.
They're just so well done. But one in particular of his that I like, and maybe you've seen it, it's titled My Baldness. And I want to write an article about this because I've analyzed it 3 times at least. The thumbnail is a picture of him in a Whole Foods, and it looks like he's bald, but the camera's just cutting off the top of his head. And then the episode begins. He's in the Whole Foods with his wife. But then it goes to earlier in the day, and you realize he's going to talk to you about why YouTube videos go viral, which is like this little hidden, it's like a marketer would have put in the title, how YouTube, make your YouTube video viral, and like some stupid graphic. But like, he draws you in. There's like, what is he going to talk about his baldness? He's not even bald. And then he gives this really great description of an analysis of YouTube videos going viral. And then he ends up back at the Whole Foods. And then there's a whole other story where he's trying to set up the TV for the election, but he doesn't have the right cord. So he's got, and it's these, I'm wondering if, are there any episodes for you like that, or have you seen that episode, or any, I guess maybe just any last comment on what's happening there with his story structure?
Yeah. So I have seen that episode. And I forgot that he talked about the virality of YouTube videos. I think that was one of the first videos of his that I watched. But I do remember, like, he's in the Whole Foods and he doesn't have the frame doesn't have his hair in it. And I remember the TV. The stuff that I reference of his is actually his longer format stuff. So I think he has the one about, I think one's called My Kid and I. Mm-hmm. He has one about his relationship with his now wife, but his girl, like when they were dating at the time. Mm-hmm. I like those longer ones. And it's like, you can't miss the story. And I'm a little bit dense and I need something that, like, I can't miss it. And then I have time to, like, really sit with it as I'm watching a 20-minute thing. Right. So those are the ones that I find myself actually going back and rewatching. Yeah. Interesting. To get those pieces out of it. I
want to talk a little bit about your company, Ontolo, and tie this. I mean, I know you're vlogging about it now, but what does your tool or tool set do? Yeah. Who's the right audience for it? What problems does it solve? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm really glad you're asking me this, because I haven't. You need to work it out. I've been so deep in code for the last 2 years, and I'm like, finally, like, bringing it out to people. Fundamentally, what Ontolo is, it will probably help with any part of any aspect of marketing that involves research. So if you're looking for guest post opportunities, it'll find you guest post opportunities. If you're looking for links, it'll find you links. If you have, your boss gives you 10 grand to sponsor a conference or to donate and get links, it'll find you those opportunities. If you need to do research and find exactly who to outreach to, you only want to do guest posts where you also have the email address, it'll find all that stuff. So when I set out to build Ontolo, I set out to build a research tool basically with a front end that was tailored to marketers. So behind the scenes, it's really broad, but very specific. And so just to kind of give an example of what you can do with it, the way that Ontolo parses a web page is the same that, you would look at a page and you could say, this is the main article, this is the sidebar, this is the header, this is the footer, these are the comments. That stuff. So does Ontolo. The way that I wrote the parser, it's very smart at knowing what's where. Mm-hmm. So you could actually run a query. You could say, go find me guest post opportunities that talk about Donald Trump in the article and Hillary Clinton in the comments. Huh. And you're looking for these opportunities. So Ontolo goes out, runs a bunch of queries on a bunch of different search engines, crawls all those results, puts them into an index, and then you could say, only give me of the 5,000 web pages that Ontolo just found, only show me the ones that mention Donald Trump in the actual article, that mention Hillary Clinton in the comments, and that has AdSense displayed in the actual blog post. Oh, wow. And only show me ones with email addresses, because I want to just I just need to get through a bunch of outreach. So there's, go ahead.
Yeah. When you said that it's broad but specific, do you mean that the back end, this tool could do things that aren't marketing related, but you've built the front end to serve the needs of marketers? Is that what you meant by that?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So behind the scenes, all it does is it goes and it finds information. It runs a bunch of queries. It has all these different query permutations. So if you're looking for guest posts, it'll do, SEO guest post, SEO guest author, guest writer. It does all that behind the scenes, aggregates all the data in a really general way. But then when you search it from the front end, that's all of that stuff is tailored to marketers for affiliate marketing, advertising, SEO, content market, all of it.
That makes sense. Are there any other tools you could compare this to that are out there? Is this like a BuzzStream or an Open Site Explorer, or like how is it similar or different?
Yeah. So this is actually exactly the problem that I'm facing. So I mentioned this in today's vlog, and I'm going to be a little bit more candid about it even next week. People who sign up and then end up leaving Onslow, the reason they leave is they haven't figured out how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is because this particular thing doesn't exactly exist in the marketplace, and I have to help people understand how to use it. Mm-hmm. The closest thing that I would compare it to, I used to work with Garrett. He started Citation Labs, and that's a prospecting tool.
Yeah.
It probably most closely relates to a prospecting tool that's going to go out, find opportunities, bring them into you. What Onslow does that's different is just the level of granularity and detail and speed is just unmatched. And I wrote it in C, and the crawler and parser that I wrote it can crawl and index at a rate of, I think it's like 450 million web pages per day on 6-year-old hardware.
Wow.
So it's very, very fast. And just by comparison, I read in a blog post maybe a year and a half or two ago that Moz, their machines do about 25 million a day, and this does about 450.
Oh wow!
So it's just really fast. The amount of data that you get, it's just like more of everything all around.
So like a case in point, or I guess an application of this tool. Tell me if it would do this or not. I have this. I helped a client get like a domain authority 88 link or something at one point because I found an industry article on treehugger.com. This was in their industry that had like 50 comments, and most of them were all follow-up questions. The readers had more questions they wanted answers to. And so I had my client, I researched, found the questions that were open-ended, and we pitched that to Treehugger and said, hey, my client can be interviewed, and we wrote all the questions for you. And so he had like no work to do. I would love to replicate that though. How can I show me all of the articles with a lot of comments that have maybe a lot of social shares or whatnot in this industry or around this topic? Is that something this tool would do?
Yep. So some of what you said it can, and some can do it, and then some it can't. So third-party data, social data, and like Moz data or Ahrefs or Majestic, it's just too expensive and it's too slow. I think with Moz, at the high end, we were getting like 1,000 queries per second that Moz would support. But since you could, for $100 a month, you could theoretically have millions of web pages in there, the API cost to Moz would be tens of thousands of dollars, I think. It's just not cost effective. But what it can do is find relevance. So I think of like PageRank and MozRank as like value, like the DA88.
Yeah.
That's value. And then I think of relevance as, you get stuff exported from Moz, you get a link, you get these 10,000 links. You don't know if it's a guest post. You don't know if it's a directory. The relevance is missing from it. Right. But with Onslow, you get all the relevance. So what you could do is you could say, I want to find blogs, because if you're looking for the open-ended questions and comments, you're going to find that with blogs. So you could say, I'm looking for blogs about these topics. And then it would go out, research, run a bunch of blog queries across a bunch of different search engines, bring all that stuff in, and then you could, export, then you could refine your query. You could say, it's about recycling glass or something like that for, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to think of something that might be on Tree Hugger.
Yeah. The race to Tree Hugger.
Benefits of, yeah.
This was electric bicycles, but anyways.
Perfect. Yeah. So electric bicycles, you could say, show me all the blogs that mention electric bicycles in the actual content. Because if you just do a search on Google for electric bicycle blog, not all of those articles are actually going to be about electric bicycles. But with Ontolo, you can have it return only articles about electric bicycles.
The one sort of metric that I don't see anyone giving, and maybe this tool does, which would be phenomenal, is just give me the number of comments on a piece of content. Can it do something like that? Is that possible? Because with all the different commenting systems out there?
Yep. So now we're getting into like the data model of Ontolo. That data exists.
Yeah.
But you can't retrieve it.
Really?
Until there's another part of the indexer that I need to build in. So purely because of, it's just a lot of data. So for every for every million web pages, I think it's something like 10 gigs of disk space that it takes. Mm-hmm. And so I had to be really picky about what I store and how I store it. Mm-hmm. Storing the number of comments doesn't get stored, but in the next version, that and some other stuff is going to be stored so that all that stuff is retrieved faster. Yeah. But that you would be able to say, like, show me all the blog posts that talk about electric bicycles in the actual article, and then sort it by the total number of comments.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
That'd be like summer next year.
Yeah. That's always a metric that I wish a tool would provide, but I see how it could be difficult now. Yeah. What was the question? I was curious about Ontolo as the company. Is it you, or do you have a team, or how's that set up?
Yeah. So when I started writing the code for 6 months. This was in 2008. And then Garrett came on and we grew it. We mostly did agency work, and we sort of went different ways because I wanted to focus on the tool and he really enjoyed doing the agency work, and that's worked out really well for him. Mm-hmm. And then I started working with another friend of mine who's a phenomenal sysadmin, and we rewrote Ontolo a few years ago. And then when I was like, I don't know if I want to be doing this anymore, he got a job. He works at he works at a big company now, and he's the guy that when nobody else can figure it out, they give it to him and he figures it out. He's phenomenal. Yeah. But, so right now it's just me. And, when you don't promote the company for a while, the company's declined for most of the last 4 years. And, that started to pick back up again. So
that's good.
I would imagine, mid to late next year, I'll probably start hiring again.
There's two semi-friction points when I think of using a tool like this. This might just be helpful for you to know what they are. One is I'm always questioning, did it catch everything? Am I missing something without manually researching? Number one. And number two is I always find when I try to run these kind of research campaign-based types of things, it never seems to work that great for smaller businesses or smaller industries because there's just not enough to do a broken link campaign or, even this commenting thing I was talking about. You kind of need to be in a space that has some volume to it, I find. So I'm wondering if you have any, thoughts about those two elements. And again, maybe it just might be helpful for you to hear that too. Yeah, no, that's great. So on the topic of, did it get everything? So I'm completely anal retentive about that. Yeah. Efficiency and detail. Like those are the three things. When I looked at, I hadn't made Ontolo what I wanted it to be. Those were the three things. So does it get everything? What I can say is that like a lot of the prospecting tools, they'll just query Google or Bing. Ontolo does Google and Bing, obviously, but it also has, I think it's close to, if not more than 100 different sources that it's actually querying. So you mean like other search engines or like aggregate sites like Reddit or like? Yeah. So it's basically all of that. Okay. The idea, what I wanted to happen is essentially what you're saying. Like you use Ontolo, and I can't guarantee that it's going to find everything, but I can say pretty confidently it's finding 90 or 95% of it. Yeah. I didn't want you to use Ontolo and then you have to go do a little bit more research somewhere else. Yeah. And that's always going to be one of the goals. Mm-hmm. And then to the side of, is this just for bigger companies or bigger situations, or could a small, business utilize a tool like this?
Yeah. So when I think of small business, like sort of the smallest scale that I can imagine is you have a boutique shop in a city.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, and when I think about a campaign like that, you have, and this is sort of how I approached doing SEO when I worked in agencies and did all and whatnot, is you can say that you're a restaurant in Boulder and only look for Boulder restaurant opportunities, and you'll wear that out in about 2 hours. Yeah. You'll find most of what you need in a couple hours. But then you have this whole other thing, which is that your market is Boulder. So then you can start going to look at what's all the stuff that's going on in Boulder. What are all the events that you can sponsor? What are all the events that you can show up to? I started doing more stuff on Instagram, and when I post photos or videos of the sunrise, a whole bunch of Boulder businesses like my stuff or start following me or comment on it purely because I tagged it with Boulder, Colorado. And so, there's a tire company that did this yesterday that commented on a thing that I made, and it's a local tire company. It's not a chain. And, now I know, like, if I need tires, like, they're legitimately now a company that I'm going to think about.
So are you saying Ontolo specifically can find Instagram stuff? Or
so it won't find Instagram stuff, but what you would be able to say, what you would be able to say is, I want to, you could say, show me stuff about Boulder events, Boulder nightlife, other Boulder restaurants, Boulder contests or competitions. There's a huge athletic community here, so you have all these races and stuff like that. So you can just find all the stuff that's happening around Boulder.
So I'm thinking of other applications of this. One thing we do for clients is find them places they could speak, or find them podcasts they could be interviewed on, or find them sponsorship. Like that's sort of what this could do, is you could say, find me X in this topic, and then it comes back. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And just let me see if I can find the specific thing here. So in the actual interface, so I said that it's a general research tool behind the scenes, and the interface is designed for marketers. I think there are like 96 or 104, somewhere around 100 specific searches that specific kinds of searches that you can run. So
cool.
In social media, you can search for Medium users or Meetup or Pinterest or GitHub or Facebook, obviously. But you can also do a search for organizations. So in the organizations section, there's actually a search query for conferences. And the way that works is behind the scenes. So I'm indexing all these web pages, all the different variations that you would query for conferences. It handles, you don't have to think about that. All you have to say is Boulder, Colorado, or electric bikes, or sustainability, or whatever it is. And then it runs all the permutations behind the scenes and finds all the conferences.
That's awesome. So just, we got a couple more minutes just to wrap things up. Are you, I wanted to maybe ask you your thoughts about SEO, but I want to first preface it and say, are you in the headspace? Are you sort of thinking about the SEO industry these days? Is that something you're paying attention to, or?
I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty disconnected from it. Yeah. I actually read Hacker News every day. I read more technology related stuff than SEO related stuff. So as far as like what's going on in the industry, I was listening to some of the podcasts that you've done. I'm like, I didn't know this was going on. So I think my identity is probably more as a researcher and a marketer and a researcher and a technology person / programmer before it's an SEO.
Yeah, interesting. So it's funny. I've said off and on that I can possibly see a day for me where I'm not paying attention to SEO, because I think there's always a certain anxiety that comes with it, because you need to be on top of paying attention to what's changing all of the time. And there's always the anxiety of like the algorithm changes, and then the traffic and the rankings. And is that, and I know you identify a bit as an introvert as well. Is that an element of SEO that maybe turned you away from it? Like just the sort of the constant connection and the industry and the Twitter and all that. Is that something that you kind of wanted to step away from as well?
Yeah, it's I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just exhausting for me.
Yeah.
Like I can do conferences, I can do groups of people that I don't know. Like I've done a lot of work to like do that well, but I have to come home and rejuvenate, like I have to do that. It's exhausting, but to sort of be at the whim of the search engines, that was something that just as a personal preference, I wanted to, when I started doing SEO in August of 2001, the Google dance was, I forget if it's the first or last Friday of every month, but like you wait for that. And on that day, you have a ton of ranking reports you have to run, and you just hope to God that everyone's rankings went up and that you're not spending the weekend researching, trying to figure out how the algorithm changed. And there's something about that sort of like being at the whim of all these other people's decisions that I wanted to be the one initiating the change. And so designing the technology and taking a broad research and designing a marketing research tool that you could apply to any industry, it keeps me sort of out of those tornadoes that run through every once in a while.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, I always sort of have this like fantasy about getting back into something that's more strictly music or art, or like has that kind of intrinsic, I find marketing to be very much, you're always focused on the goal and trying to move the metrics, and that can be, I agree, that can be a little tiring as well. Not even the people part of it, but just the like constant, it doesn't end, right? So you're always, whereas like, if I sit down and write a piece of music, that's like, that's a rejuvenating process. That's fulfilling.
Exactly.
So anyways, this has been a great discussion. I wasn't sure what I would expect by going with no questions or no notes or anything. I knew it would be good, but it headed in a lot of directions that were cool and that I think the audience should find interesting. So before we wrap it up, tell everyone where they can find your vlog, and then Ontolo, and where else you want to point people, Twitter, Instagram, and all that stuff.
Yep. So the easiest way to find all that stuff is just go to benwills.com, WILLS. And that has links to Ontolo. It has links to all the social media accounts. Right now, that's just a static page. I think within the next week, that will actually be more filled out. So all the vlog posts will get pushed to there. Just go to benwills.com, and then ontolo.com is ONTOLO.com. And you can find out about the research software.
Awesome. Great, Ben. Thanks so much. Awesome discussion.
I appreciate it.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to hit stop now.